You're listening to Miscast Commentary.
Hey everybody, welcome to Miscast Commentary, Coming Attractions episode. I am Joe Finley, Todd Tiba the Sailor Murray, probably dead at sea. Don't know what to tell you. He's not here. He will be back with us next week for our commentary episode. What is that commentary going to be? Well, I'm going to let some awesome new friends tell you what that is. I am joined this week by two wonderful people who have raised nearly $75,000 for a bunch of charities doing their George Lucas talk show. It is growing from, it grew from stage to now it's this online presence on planetscum.live, and you can find it on YouTube, and it is an amazing watch. It is a deep dive. You can find some crazy stuff on there. I couldn't encourage you more to check out at least some of their watching marathon of the entire Star Wars live action series. That includes the Ewok movies and the holiday special, the entire Skywalker series, Solo, Rogue One, the whole deal. And these guys did it all in a row. We have complained about our 9-hour-a-thons. We've complained about our 6-hour-a-thons. And I see these guys do it, and these are guys who I admire a great deal, doing an amazing thing. Not just the fact that it was a fundraiser and made all this money, but the fact that they actually made it through that. I mean, being in the mind of Watto or in the mind of George Lucas for that amount of time can drive a man just crazy. I don't know, but these guys did it, and they did it really well. They were so kind to join me and let us have a listen to my interview with Patrick Cotnoir and Conor Ratliff. Hey everybody, we are here with a special pair of guests today. Very excited about this one. Our first guest, you know, he was a talent booker on the Chris Gethard Show. Probably the most called out talent booker in the history of any show. I've never known one by name before. And he's currently working with Marvel and doing all sorts of awesome stuff. He also had another job that I want to talk about a little bit later. We welcome Patrick Cotnoir. Patrick, how you doing?
Hi. Good. I'm so curious what that other job is, but don't tell me yet.
Oh, never. And our other guest, you know, from things like the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt movie, the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, also the Chris Gethard Show, ran for president at age 35, and we welcome Conor Ratliff. Conor, how we doing?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for asking.
Now I combine you two and say that both of these guys are 2/3 of the George Lucas talk show, the coolest talk show on the internet right now. And very excited to talk about that because it was just an amazing idea that was born from stage that became this internet thing that is awesome. And if you are not checking it out, check it out now. But if you're checking this out and not checking that out, I already don't trust your judgment. So don't. All right, so let us get started. Where did you guys originally meet?
Ooh, do you want to tell this or do you want me to?
Yeah, we met working on when the Chris Gethard Show originally was a stage show at UCB. Patrick, did you ever go see that show as an audience member?
No, I didn't. I never saw it. My first one was the dance battle episode of MNN, so it's like episode 7 or 8, somewhere around there.
Yeah, basically, I was a fan audience member when it was a live show at UCB New York, and then it became a public access show in New York City, and then Patrick started working on that after I'd already been involved in that from the beginning, and then I don't remember exactly how it happened that we started working together so often, basically on everything, pretty much.
Yeah.
I think it was
I actually, you know, when we met, but I actually remembered, I think, our first interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you remember this. This is exclusive. You're getting exclusive right now.
We met the first day that I remember us meeting. We were doing a remote piece where a couple of Chris Gethard people were singing Christmas carols on the New York City subway, and it was very awkward and uncomfortable. And Patrick was just this kid who was like helping out, and I thought you seemed very together, very with it for a kid.
Yeah.
What was our first interaction?
I think our first interaction, I actually found the DMs, and it's me DMing the Ratliff 2012 for president Twitter. It's going to be embarrassing. Don't look.
I'm going to look at it right now.
You were going to get tickets for the Arrested Development reunion?
Oh, right. That was our first time hanging out as friends.
I didn't go to that reunion.
Oh, it wasn't the reunion, but we waited in line for the
banana stand. But I was like, how's the line? If I go now, do you think I'll get tickets or something like that? And I did not know you at all.
Yeah, you saw you in line for reunion. I left because I was too far back. If you're not buying 4, I would love to pay you for 1. I'm at Gethard Show every week, and I think you're hilarious. If not, no big deal, and have fun.
I thought you were funny.
That is,
we were in line when Netflix did a banana stand and gave out frozen bananas in New York, and that was, I think, one of the earliest times that we just hung out socially.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, that's awesome. And that is where I came to know you guys. I came into the Gethard Show fairly late in the MNN. I think it was right around the time that the announcement that the original pilot was being made. And so I heard about that, and I watched and I saw some clips, and I'm like, well, this is really cool. And then I went back to the beginning, and I think you guys were on Fusion by the time I finished. So it was such a fun thing. It's such a fun show that still, I mean, the community of Gethard still exists. I'm a member of Facebook groups, and anytime anybody pops up, like Conor, when you're on any show, you're on Last Week Tonight or something like that, there's a still of you on in that Facebook. They're like, Conor was there. Yeah. And I mean, what is the support like from that kind of a group for such a thing that you don't know that really anything's going to come out of it? It's a fun UCB show, and you get like a local crowd, and then you do what should be a local cable access thing that actually stretches, all over the world.
Yeah, I mean,
you go ahead.
I think that show never had the biggest following, obviously. Otherwise, everyone would know about it, but everyone doesn't. But it had such a loyal group that a lot of people would stick with it for a long time, or a lot of people would be very heavily into it for 6 months and then move on, and then a new person would be into it heavily for 6 months. A lot of people, they're like, yeah, I watched it a lot when I was sad and depressed, and then I got out of that, and now I don't watch it anymore because I associate that with the time of my life. And that's good, and it's great, and it's awesome that we can help people get through that. But then there's people who are still into that world and those people, and I think that's been very helpful, especially for something like Lucas, because when the world changed, we didn't know what we were going to do with the show. And I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, Conor. We didn't know what we were going to do. Some of us didn't want to do anything. Some of us did want to do a lot of stuff. And it was just like, how can we make this work? How can we figure this out? And we really lucked out that Gethard had this channel that he was building because it had the built-in audience of Geth people. It had the technology backup support that we could use. It had the producers behind the scenes running everything that I couldn't handle or that Conor couldn't handle or whatever. And it's great that the world still exists, that we can go and promote it in that group of 5,000 people, and they will tell their friends and whatever, and that the community is still there even if the show is dead, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and I mean, sorry, go ahead, Conor.
Yeah, and it went on. The thing is, because the lifespan of the Gethard Show was that it really had one full season as a real TV show, because both seasons on Fusion, it was sort of like it was a channel nobody got. It was hard to find ways to watch it. People were still mostly watching it on Facebook Live and YouTube.
I think, and this is not a slight against your show at all, I think more people will hear this podcast than watch the Gethard Show on Fusion.
I'm really sad if that's true, only because I know what my numbers are. But
but it's interesting because it was a thing that existed for basically about a decade, and it incorporated so many people, like the ebb and flow of performers and talent that was involved in the show, that, for instance, like Dave Bloodband, who was the human fish on the Gethard Show, we're both on Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And it's kind of crazy because we're not on that show because we were on the Chris Gethard Show. It's just a coincidence.
Yeah.
We don't interact, but it's just it's at the point now where it's splintered off into a lot of different worlds.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that, because you guys were all UCB guys for the vast majority. And so you're just a bunch of talented guys who actually, that was kind of a nexus for you all at one time. And then you kind of, Big Bang have all gone off and done your own things. And I want to start with you, Connor. I want to start with the podcast Dead Eyes. Born of a story, or at least the first time I heard it was a story on the Gethard Show. Can you tell, just for people who don't know what it is, can you tell people what Dead Eyes is?
Yeah. Dead Eyes is a podcast. It's a nonfiction comedic investigation podcast. And the inciting incident is something that happened to me back in the year 2000, which is I auditioned many times through a process, and I ended up booking a very small speaking role on the HBO miniseries Band of Brothers. And then the day before I was supposed to start filming my scenes, I was getting ready to go down. I was living in Liverpool, England at the time. I got a call from my agent saying, you need to get to London right away, because Tom Hanks was directing the first episode I was supposed to be in. They said, Tom Hanks has seen your audition tape and he's having second thoughts. He thinks you have dead eyes. So I had to go re-audition in person for Tom Hanks, and I did this, and then I was immediately fired. And it's always been kind of this, that was a traumatic thing at the time, but I thought it would be. And then I was also told, as I was being let go, that they've decided to go with a more military type. That was what I was told, which if you see the scene that I was supposed to be in, this is not true, because the character is played by a short character actor. It's played by it's not like they recast it with The Rock or something. It was very much a character part. So I am using that story as sort of like a gateway to make a podcast about failure and success and regret and memory and kind of like, and how weird show business is. And it was kind of this podcast that for a few years, whenever I would occasionally have meetings and people would say, do you have any ideas for podcasts? And this would always be sort of like the last one I would say. I said, well, I have this idea, and nobody was really into it. And then I finally reached a point where somebody was into it, and then we made the pilot, and then it ended up at HeadGum. It was actually Ben Schwartz, my friend Ben Schwartz, who actually helped it become a podcast, because he had heard the pilot and he was like, talked it up to HeadGum, and he was like, you guys should, because I think a lot of people thought, well, that's a funny idea, but you couldn't really do more than like 2 or 3 episodes. And I think Ben was sort of vouching for me that, like, I think this guy will be able to like milk this for all it's worth, which we've been pretty lucky about so far. Yeah.
And I tell you, like, I remember very specifically when you told the story on Gethard, and because it's something that it's not like it was being built up to. It's not like it was a scheduled thing. It was just kind of a throwaway in the middle of this episode.
No. Shannon O'Neill mentioned it. I didn't even bring it up. It was Amy Poehler was there, and they were doing this thing, and Shannon made a joke about it. And then to give context to the joke, because it got sort of a weird laugh, like it was a non sequitur. Mm-hmm. I then like had to explain in front of the audience and Amy Poehler like what had happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I remember I laughed my head off about that, but it was the vulnerability. And I think that's something you did a lot on that show, is you just kind of had this is what it is. And it was just, you laugh not at the story, because it's sad that it's like, oh, a young actor lost a job that could have been pretty killer. But it's like, just the way you told the story, I was just in tears, because it was like, you just put yourself out there in such a way that, oh.
Yeah. I think it's funny because mostly we've gotten a really, really positive response, lots of good reviews and stuff. But every now and then there'll be someone online who'll say something, and it's almost always someone who hasn't actually listened to the podcast who'll be like, oh, get over it, like, move on. And will not realize that the tone of it is not, it's not really that I'm obsessed or that this is all I think about. I mean, I think about it a lot more now just because it's the podcast. Yeah. I have to work on the podcast. But, yeah.
I've never told you this.
What?
All those comments?
Yeah. Oh, they're you?
They're me.
Oh,
I knew it.
I'm really sorry.
What a little troll.
He's just trying to keep you humble. You can't be George Lucas on the George Lucas talk show without getting kind of ahead about it, right? So he's just keeping you on earth. I will move on now to Patrick, because Patrick is working for a little upstart called Marvel currently. And tell us what you're doing there right now.
I'm the editorial and talent producer over there. So I book a lot of their podcasts and a lot of their video content. So anytime they have a guest come on for a video or one of their, any of their wonderful myriad of shows that they have going on, I'm usually the person in charge of that. And then we go do Comic-Con live streams and premiere live streams in the normal world we would. So that's been really fun. I went to 4 movie premieres last year and 2 Comic-Cons, and it's been a weird whirlwind of a year.
That's awesome. How does something like that come about? I mean, not that you were inexperienced as a talent,
Yeah, insanely, it ties back to Gethard again. I think it was Christmas Day 2018, 2018. I got a message from Gethard's manager's assistant being like, "Hey, dude, hope you're doing well." Not acknowledging it was Christmas. Hope you're doing well. My friend is leaving this gig, and I feel like you might like doing it. Do you want to do it? And I was like, yeah. Because I'd mostly been unemployed since Gethard ended, mostly by choice. I needed a break. I think we were all burned out a little bit towards the end. So I didn't really work until November or so.
Okay.
And I took this gig, and I was booking conventions, like smaller conventions, Harry Potter conventions, and like Alien conventions. It was a wild gig. And I literally had it for a month and a half, and then was like, guys, I'm so sorry. I gotta go. It's Marvel.
Yeah. I refuse that anybody wouldn't have understood that.
To their credit, they're like, yeah, of course, go. So that was it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun, and I've gotten to travel a lot. I was in LA like 8 times last year, which is always, it's a nice vacation to go for, a week or whatever. It's fun. Yeah. Yeah.
But we want to talk about George Lucas Talk Show now, obviously. It started out as a UCB show. How did that all come into being?
There was a system at UCB where you could audition for shows, and they call them spanks. And basically you put up a show, and if they like it, they'll usually give you some notes and develop it, and then then you get a run as a show. And I had done a one-man show where I'd written it all, and I played a bunch of characters, and it was basically it was local authors night at the Mid-Missouri Public Library. That was the name of the show. And we did it once. I thought it went really well.
I saw it. It was fun.
I thought the audience loved it. And then I didn't get a second show. Like, they basically were like, no, you're not getting a second audition for it. And I was really surprised. And then I thought about it, and I thought, well, because I don't remember what year it was, maybe 2013, something like that. And I remember thinking, you know what? I probably am not. It's not a sexy enough premise, and I'm not enough of a draw to be able to bring in a regular audience for a run of this show. And that's not why they rejected it, but that's why I thought was like a good reason. And I thought, the next time I do a show, I'm going to have a big pop culture hook that will bring people in who have no idea who I am. And I was trying to think, what do I know about? Because I at the time I remember thinking, my next show will be something. Or I remember thinking that the working title for whatever the show was going to be was Harry Potter Night at Hogwarts. That was the name of the show, which I think is a very subtly dumb title for a show. I don't know what the idea would be, but I'm like, I don't know enough about Harry Potter to make up a Harry Potter show. And I've been doing this George Lucas character to amuse my friends since the special editions came out. Actually, maybe even since they were in development, where I would just pretend to be George Lucas, and my friends would ask me about Star Wars, and I'd tell them the real answers for things. And so I thought, maybe the easiest thing is to just do this as a talk show where I'm George Lucas and the guests are really themselves. And then that was it. And Patrick was the warm-up comic at the very first test show that we did, because the person who was supposed to be the warm-up comic didn't show, and so I just turned to Patrick and said, will you do the warm-up? And
not a performer,
not a comedian. He has no act.
Nope.
This video exists online. It's viewable, and I think you do better than a lot of people that I've seen at open mics. Most people I've seen at open mics.
Yeah,
just effortlessly charming.
Okay.
And then Patrick, you were just around so much that I think you said that I called you a producer before.
Yeah, it hit a point where I was sort of helping out. I was filming the shows for you and stuff just so you had them, I guess. I don't know. And then it hit a point where we were in a conversation with somebody. And he goes, "Oh, this is Patrick, my producer." And I was like, "What are you talking about? You've never said that." I don't know No, I'm not. What do you
think
mean?
that's so great. I don't remember doing that, but I think it's so great that I did that. That
It's
you were
very
just like,
funny.
that I thought of you as my producer and you didn't know that is really funny to me.
Yeah.
It's a good way to fall into a job.
I mean,
but so, and like you guys said, so COVID happens, the UCB theater closure happens. You guys, what? Sorry. And these things happen, and you guys are up in the air what you want to do with the show. So what do you decide to do this in an online format, and then how do you decide what it's going to look like compared to the stage show and all that?
Well, originally back in like late March, early April, you know, I had taken a couple months off from the show, and Griffin was actually doing these because Griffin Newman, who plays Watto on the show as the talk show sidekick, he was gonna took the 2 months that I was gonna be away to do these 1-person shows as Watto. So he already done like a one-man Watto show, and my next show back was going to be in May, and it was going to be our annual Star Wars Day show, which we always try to make a very big deal out of. We try to make that a really special, fun show. And
yes, we're booked. It was like ready to go. We were fully good to go.
Yeah, I saw you had your prizes ready for the a-thon. You had some great stuff there.
Yeah.
Patrick, who were the guests? I forget already. Who are the guests? Are we on?
Kenny, who came on she's been on twice now. She's the voice of Ash in Pokemon and a whole bunch of other stuff. And then David Mandel, who's the showrunner on Veep and like a Seinfeld writer in SNL, and he wrote the giant Ralph McQuarrie book. Like, he was like the guy. It was so exciting that we had him, and then, you know.
Yeah, and so Patrick and Griffin were saying, look, people are going to be really depressed on Star Wars Day and people who come to our show who look forward to celebrating Star Wars Day that way, we should do a show for them to like, you know, give them something to cheer them up. And I was just not interested in doing it. I just thought it's going to be bad. It's
like
not
very actively not interested.
Yeah, I said it's going to be bad, and more people are going to see this than ever saw the live version. So it's going to diminish the reputation of the live version.
Yeah.
Like people are just going to, if we do it and it's bad, people will retroactively say that must have been bad for 6 years at UCB Theater. And I was like, I just don't want to do it. And then they said, well, what if, and actually one of our ideas was, I said, look, if we do it, we have to come up with something good to justify it if it's not as good in terms of it being funny or being a quality show. And I said, well, here's one thing. If we actually get George Lucas as a guest, then that's worth it. And we did try. We really did try to actually get George Lucas. And if we'd done that, that might have been the last one we ever did. If we had just gotten George Lucas on Star Wars Day and talked to him for 5 minutes. And I want to say that door is still open. We have not closed it. Anytime the real George Lucas wants to come on the show,
Connor promises if he ever comes on, that's the last one we'll ever do.
Until the next one we do after that.
Yeah.
And but here's the thing. So we tried that, and then the other thing was, well, what if we do it for charity? And at the time, there was a GoFundMe, because when UCB closed, a lot of the staff, a lot of the interns, workers, and things were left in the lurch, and some of them were able to collect unemployment, but it's just, it's like everybody, it's a bad situation all around. And so there was a GoFundMe that had been set up to help the UCB employees and staff, and we thought, well, if we could raise a little bit of money for that, then that will make it worth doing. And then I said, what if we watch all the Star Wars movies? And they were like, well, that's going to be like 9 hours or something. And I said, no, all of them. Like, what if we watch not just the original ones that Lucas did, but also the sequel, and also the Ewok movies and the holiday special. And I made it this 30-hour thing. And then
that was really the only way you were interested in it.
Yeah, there was a moment in the thing, where you argue to him. You were like, you said that if we don't do the Ewoks, that this whole thing isn't worth doing.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's very true.
And I think the weird thing is, during that marathon, because I think if we had just if one thing hadn't happened, we might have just done the marathon and then thought, well, that was a fun thing, we'll do that once a year or do something like it.
But then during the marathon, Chris Gethard came on, and somehow, through an offhand remark Griffin made, a challenge was laid down that we would watch all of Arliss, all 7 seasons of Arliss at the end to add it onto the 30 hours. And this got agreed to in ways that I'm not fully clear on. And we ended up, and then I think it was because I said, yeah, if we get up to, I set a goal that at this one we'd raise like $3,000 or $4,000.
You said 20,000, or you said
it was if we raised another like $12,000 at that point. But there's no way we'll raise another $12,000. And then we did, and I got very depressed because I remember saying on the stream, people are just giving money to hurt us. This isn't about helping people. I was really angry. And then someone said, what if we raise another $5,000 on top of that? Then we don't have to watch Arliss. And we did it. We got the additional $5,000, so we did not have to watch Arliss. But then over the course of that week or two where we were recovering,
we should also say at some point, Robert Wool, the star of Arliss, came on the stream under the impression that if we hit this certain amount of money, we would watch Arliss. Yeah. And then when we hit the point where we were like, well, we're not going to watch it, we were like, well, he came on thinking that we were going to watch it, so we should probably do something.
Yeah. And it fell, and there were $12,000 worth of donations that may have been made under the idea that we were going to continue the marathon and keep watching Arliss, which would have killed us. Like physically, if we'd had to go another hour, I think I would have been in serious physical trouble.
Yeah.
But then we were talking about, we thought, well, people did donate under the presumption that we would watch Arliss in some way. So then we're like, what if we do it in a reasonable, healthy way, which is we'll watch one season every Sunday for 7 weeks. And I think that changed the show. And it was also, Bobby Wool was so nice to us. He would show up every week and hang out with us at the end of it during the season finale, and then sometimes afterwards for hours. And it was such an organic occurrence that we took these two things that are completely disparate, which is Robert Wool's HBO show Arliss, which is about a sports agent. It has nothing to do with George Lucas at all. But over the course of the 7 weeks, we sort of like realized that, oh, we can make this show. I mean, we've always done that where we'll have a guest and we find the way of making it a Lucas thing. But this is really 7 weeks that, for the most part, we were talking about Arliss more than we were talking about anything related to Lucas. But we were still trying to do it within the weird world of this show. And it really did it felt like the DNA of the show was being altered a little bit each week in terms of what it was, what we could do. And so and by the end of the Arliss stream, we'd already agreed to do a 1,600 pen complete series watch along on the 5th of July. And then we started saying, well, what if we did a version of this show that wasn't, 12 hours long, but was a reasonable amount of time, like 3.5 or 4 hours long per episode. And that's what we've sort of arrived at the moment, is like once a month we'll do a charity watch-a-thon that is long. But most weeks we'll just do a reasonable 3.5 to 4 hour show.
Reasonable. Very reasonable.
It is, and I think it is reasonable under COVID, and given what we are, we can't. There's a lot of things we can't do, but this is one thing that we can do. Like there are a lot of things we can't make the show be, but we can make it be 4 hours long.
That's the truth. When we record too, we usually, because we do full length commentaries, we usually record 4 to 6 hours a night, and we don't start until 8:30 because I got to wait till my kids are in bed because we do this out of my living room. So, so that's just that thing. And I remember the one time we did an all-nighter, specifically because my co-host wanted me to drop him off at Toys R Us to buy a Super Nintendo Classic the day that it came out. So we stayed up all night and did movie after movie after movie, and then I went and dropped them off so he could line up and maybe get stabbed. I don't really know what happened after that, but yeah. And I remember how hard that was, and we documented that. It's on our YouTube. We documented between movies and when I dropped him off and when I was like in the car all alone and stuff like that. And then I heard you guys were doing this, and at first I just thought you were doing like the Skywalker saga, which would have been plenty. And then I started hearing oh, it's also like the other parts of the story. And then it's like, oh no, it's not just the other parts of the story. We're going holiday special. We're going Ewoks, and I was like, blew my mind, and I was all in.
I'm very, well, here's the thing.
I'm very passionate about the Ewok movies are not on Disney Plus yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Ewok movies are essential viewing for anyone who claims they're a Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think that is really important that the Ewok movies do, because like I saw them as they came out, as they aired on television, and one they're very weird, and they're kind of like, it's interesting to see an official Star Wars movie that does not have the budget of an official Star Wars movie.
Mhm.
And one of the things that they do, I think, is they take away a little bit of like the huff and puff of how important or how sacred a Star Wars movie is.
Mhm.
They really are, to me, they ground this whole saga in like, you know what? Sometimes a Star Wars movie is just about the Ewoks and they're having an adventure.
Mhm.
And it, to me, they were always something that, you know, because I was a kid and I loved Star Wars, and as the movies came out, and when the Ewok Adventures came out, I was like, I like these, but they're weird and they're not as cool as the regular Han Solo Star Wars movies. But you know what? Like by the time the prequels came out, I really had a healthy attitude towards like, these are just Star Wars movies, you know, that like, as important as they might be to you, if you like, the Ewok movies make it impossible for me to ever feel anger about a Star Wars movie not being exactly what I might wish it to be, because they are weird and fun and sometimes good and sometimes bad. That's true of all Star Wars movies, and that's true like even a movie like Empire Strikes Back, which is perfect. If you asked me to go through and nitpick it as a be as critical as you can, I could probably find a bunch of things I'm like, well, this isn't great, or I don't like this so much, or whatever. That to me, that's such a waste of time. And the Ewok movies, I think they are the cure for the sickness that is like people being mad about Star Wars.
That is a wonderful philosophy about it. We've talked about stuff like that at length just when we cover the venom of the debates about especially the most recent trilogy and stuff like that. It's just, they're just movies, and I can't understand why people it's beyond when episode 1 came out, it's like, oh, it's not how it was when I was a kid. It's now just like, you've ruined not just my childhood, but somehow life as we know it by deciding that.
It's an interesting thing, because this would come up in the show a lot. And what I would really talk about, and I do believe this, is that life is hard and getting older is hard, and disappointment in life is a thing that people struggle with. People get to a certain point where they are unhappy. And I think sometimes it feels better for some people to be able to point to a Star Wars movie and say, that's what I'm upset about. Because if you have to turn that gaze inward, that is a much harder conversation to have, to actually say like, no, I'm actually not upset about the Star Wars movie. I'm upset with the person I have become.
Oh man, that is, you are just a man after my own heart. I couldn't have even articulated it any better, as my choppy dialogue right now is indicating. But then and I go even further into that too. I was a big fan of I got the radio plays and all those different things with Mark Hamill and John Lithgow as Yoda and stuff like that. And I would say to people, they're like, I love Star Wars. I'm like, you heard those radio plays? And they're like, oh no, what radio plays? I'm like, what radio plays? How do you not know all about radio plays? And I would start getting crazy.
I used to, what did I have? I had A New Hope and Return of the Jedi on tape.
Mm-hmm.
And I would listen to them to fall asleep at night. They were like in the rotation of things I would like just have in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy to think, I need to re-listen to them, because it's crazy to think that they were like 16 hours long.
Oh, intensely long.
I don't understand how that's even possible.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about it now, that they would like just add so much stuff and be like, this is here too now. Like, it's so wild.
It also is that's also a thing that helps you understand, like, the fact that like Mark Hamill is in those, but that most of the main cast is replaced, that it kind of becomes like a regional production of Star Wars, where it's like, it also helps canonize another person could be Han Solo for longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also compare them to, I'm reading the original Marvel run of the Star Wars comics now.
Oh yeah.
And those are crazy. They're like, there's just pirates, like regular pirates in it, like riding a pirate ship, and like just crazy things where the guys who were originally writing it, you could tell before Empire came out, they were like, there's not going to be another movie. We'll just do whatever the hell we want. And they, like, who cares? But they're great. And they're so weird and strange. And like, you can tell nobody really gave them rules. They were just like, yeah, sure, talking rabbit, whatever you want, pop them in there, who cares?
Yeah.
There's also an interesting thing that only occurred to me fairly recently, which is that like a kid now who gets into Star Wars is suddenly there is this, you know, decades worth of lore to dig through. There's books and comics and just the movies alone. There's 30 hours of movies. When I was like 4 years old, there was one movie and it was 2 hours long and that was it.
Yeah.
And then a couple years later, there'd be another movie. And then a few years later, a third movie. And then that was sort of it for a while. So for most of my childhood, most of my Star Wars stuff was me playing with the toys and making up my own Star Wars things. And it made it more of a creative experience. Whereas now I feel like there's an interesting thing that happens, which is that a Star Wars movie comes out and the audience has an expectation for what they want to happen in it, where they're like, if Rey and Ben Solo aren't like this, or if they are like this, then I'm angry about it. Like, if your thing doesn't happen. And it never would have occurred to me as a child to go to a Star Wars movie and be like, well, Darth Vader better do this, or else I'm going to be mad. Even though I would have played out dozens and dozens of different plot lines where Darth Vader, you know, either died or won or whatever. You then go to the Star Wars movie and be like, oh, this is the real thing. And you just be grateful to see it.
Yeah, but I definitely recommend, people who like Star Wars, even in a casual sense, go check out those other things, because it does, like you said, open you up to a lot of different possibilities. Those radio plays, in addition to the original trilogy, which features, Mark Hamill and Billy D. Williams both reprise their roles, and that's
Anthony Daniels, too.
Oh, that's right. Anthony Daniels is the only one who's in all of them.
Are they on like Audible or Spotify or anything?
I believe they're podcasts. I think you can find them as podcasts. You can find them if you need to find them.
Yeah, so that is fine. I have all of them, but they also have the like a kind of a Knights of the Old Republic thing where it's all way back in the day, and it talks about Exar Kun and all these different ones. But like Ed Asner playing Jabba the Hutt like it just blew my mind when it was so good. I've just to dip back really quickly into the marathon. At what point? Now, there's two different points I want to talk about. At what point did you realize what you had signed up for? So, like, you're sitting there, and not that you're too tired or anything like that, but you're like maybe like 4 hours into this thing, you're like, oh, I've got another full day of this left ahead. And at what point were you just mentally finished and just kind of getting yourself through it?
I mean, for me, it happened fairly quick, because I think starting at midnight was such a choice. It was a choice. And I knew I didn't have any guests, or I didn't have any planned guests from like 2:30 a.m. our time to like 6 a.m. our time, which ended up not being the case, because like JD stopped by and Gethard stopped by and like a ton of people stopped by. So I was like, great, I'm going to sleep now, because I originally also was not a part of the show when it was a stage show. So when we were doing this, I was like, I'm just going to be the guy who is changing the clock. Like, that's what my job is. That's why I'm on camera. I'm going to sleep. I'll get up, change the clock, go back to sleep. I couldn't fall asleep. Like, the whole time I was trying, it just wasn't working. So I think that was when I was like, oh, shit, I better just get up and I'll do it. And like, I'll sit through it and we'll see what happens. But I didn't get very tired until like mid Last Jedi. That was when it like, which is crazy because that's a long time.
Yeah.
But like, you can see mid Last Jedi into Rise of Skywalker is when I crash.
Okay.
Now, I don't remember when.
You don't remember most of the day.
Yeah.
I don't remember when things happened or what I felt. I remember feeling angry when it was looking like we were going to have to watch Arliss, because I just knew I couldn't do it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to add another hour to this thing that I didn't think I could make it through. I do remember, for instance, like, I think
we could not have watched Arliss.
We couldn't have watched anything. We could not have watched.
But if we're being realistic, that would have been like 2 more days. Like it was not going to happen.
Making it through the credits of The Last Jedi was enough.
Yeah, exactly.
I do remember, was it Gil Azari and Paul Scheer? They were both in the latter hours of it, right?
They were late.
And I do remember being very grateful. It was very well-timed bookings because they were a jolt of energy at a time when we needed it. So I remember that getting to a point where I'm like, boy, I'm glad these guys are here because they're really helping to keep us afloat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also points midday where you can see Conor just completely checked out or Griffin just completely checked out, you know, which is totally reasonable.
Very reasonable, especially not just because you're doing something that's such an endurance. You're doing it in character, improvising every minute of it. And I don't think that like people can wrap their brains around that. I know they don't think it's scripted or anything like that, but I don't think that they wrap their brains around. Like, I fancy myself a low-level improviser, and to be able to do something at that level for that amount of time is, for lack of a better word, gross. It's just, it's crazy that you could do that.
Patrick, did we start saying yippee in the marathon?
We must have.
We must have, right? Because that's the only time I would have seen that scene. Because there's a thing that we say on the show. We lean into the camera and say,
I think we did because Serenado Cheney was like coming on around that point and we started saying it to her. So that was like one of the first things we did. Yeah,
because there's a scene early in The Phantom Menace where Qui-Gon Jinn tells young Anakin he's going to like leave his mother.
Yeah.
And his response is, yippee!
And we latched onto that as like, that's the first sign that Anakin is bad to the bone, is that he's going to abandon his mother, and the word that he says is yippee. And now we'll occasionally just say the word yippee. And
I'm gonna go make sure my windows are closed because I have a tropical storm going on outside my window.
Right now. My God. Okay.
Wow. I mean, that's so interesting the way he sort of personalized it. I have a tropical storm. It's so much bigger than just Patrick.
Yeah. Well, his neighbor is fine. There's Sunny and
Well, which is funny to me because I feel like that's the thing that the show that we're good at is that we're good at finding things that are not worn out Star Wars jokes, because I don't think anybody was quoting yippee as like a Star Wars quote typically prior to us.
No, I think it was noticed, but I think it was almost repressed by most people.
Yeah, and there's so much other stuff that caught on from that movie that there's a lot to, you know, people focused on other things, but I think like even if other people may have referenced it before, like we're good at finding things that aren't worn out and sort of making a meal of them, you know?
No. And to be able to do that, and like I said, getting through that amount of time without doing that and staying in character. And it was, I mean, it's such a corny thing to say, but it was a legitimate tour de force. Like it was never frustrating as a viewer to go through. And I mean, legitimately, I didn't watch it all in a row, but I watched it.
We did. We did.
I know you did. I've done that just as a human being, but I wasn't having to entertain people while doing it, nor raise money, which I mean, again, give it up to you guys for the money.
I think if it had been 24 hours, it would have been a lot easier. It really was the extra 6 hours that made it difficult. I think 24 hours would have been hard, but the second you start it, you're counting down to 24, and it kind of feels like we can do this. The fact that you're going past a full day, and then you get to the point where it's like, we've been doing this for a day, and now we're going to keep doing it for another 6 hours.
Yeah,
I think it was like 6.5. I don't know. That's just really, really makes it, you know.
Yeah. And I think that was the hardest part, were those last few hours.
Yeah.
And it's also like something people might not realize, and obviously Conor and Griffin have never done something for that long, but I had also never been on camera or like, you know, in a mode where you had to like perform for that long, and it's just exhausting on your body in general. Like even on a show where we're not doing 30 hours, I'll wake up this morning, we had a 4-hour show last night, and my body still hurts.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to see what happens when you have to be like on and going for everybody.
Not so easy, is it, Patrick?
All these years I've been saying, you guys, you got it easy.
You above the line, folks.
Hurts your body to entertain people.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to mention Griffin, as he is absent. Griffin, another person I have a great fondness for. What is it like working with him when he's in character of Watto and George is a stoic fellow as it is, so you kind of have to maintain, a straightness while a person is being Watto at your face. So what's it like working with him, like against him on that kind of thing?
It's easy. I mean, Griffin is easy to, I never even think about it. Actually, both Patrick and Griffin are very easy to, there's no part of it really that I find challenging in fun ways, but there's no part of it that is like, I never even think about it. It's just like, we're pretty good at reading each other and knowing what the other one is going for most of the time. And when we don't, it's kind of delightful. Like every now and then, one of us will be like building something up and the other two will be kind of like, what is this? And that's fun. We've always just had a good rapport. And even though Patrick is new to being on camera, like the rapport that we have with him on camera is pretty much the same rapport that we have with him off camera. That like there really isn't a big dividing line. Because sometimes you do have that where you have a really good performance energy with someone, but then when you're not in scenes together, you're kind of like, you don't have anything to say to them. You don't, sometimes that does happen where you're like, oh, we're great at doing improv together, but we don't like have anything to talk about outside of scenes, And
I think this has also turned into by far the most we all hang out or talk to each other. Just because like you and I would see each other weekly at AskCat or like, a few times a week for whatever. But like now it's every single week, at least 4 hours, probably talk on the phone beforehand just to make sure everything's okay. It's become more commonplace for us to be talking. And I think that ultimately helps the show just because we know what each other is going through and what kind of mood each other is in. And it, it all feeds into the show.
That's awesome. And you guys have said this is now obviously evolved into a newer thing. On the other side of the marathon, you've got kind of a new voice for the show, as it were, and you're having these other guests on and that sort of thing. How do you see it continuing to evolve? And do you have any immediate plans for anything like another marathon, or any plans for just what you're doing with the regular part of the show?
We're doing fundraisers once a month, so I think it's going to evolve naturally. We don't know what it is, but like 2 weeks we're watching all of Big Lake with a lot of the cast and crew, nice. The Gethard Comedy Central show. Next month we're watching all of Studio 60 with as many people as I can get. And then the month after that, I think we're doing Muppets Tonight, the ABC show from the 90s.
I like that show.
Yeah, I do too. So I don't know what it's going to turn into. I feel like we've sort of fallen into a groove, which could be a good thing or could be bad for us in the long run. Like I don't think we will get stuck in a rut. I think if things aren't fun or certain things aren't working, we will change that too.
Yeah, I mean the rut that we are stuck in is not the show. It is the current pandemic. That's the rut that we are stuck in. I think if things were normal, we probably wouldn't be doing this show.
Yep.
Not the way we're doing it, certainly. I don't think we would, for one thing, I don't think we would be able to, I think there is something about the current circumstance which makes it make sense for us to do shows that are 4 hours long and then once a month do a show that is 12 hours long. I think if film and TV production were open and we could go to stores and movies and all sorts of other things, maybe we would still we would maybe keep doing a digital stream of the show, or maybe we don't know what it's going to be like a year from now. Maybe this evolves into something where once the pandemic is over, it evolves into something else beyond that.
Yeah.
We genuinely don't know. But for now, it very much is, we're in this moment. Because for one thing, I don't know that, I think part of the reason we're able to retain our audience sometimes well past the point where under normal circumstances, we would have driven them away.
Yeah.
And part of that is because people are trapped.
Yep.
So
It's how I've been booking guests.
People are
honestly, pandemic, bad in general.
Yeah.
For talent bookers, not bad. Pretty good.
Yeah. And, part of me thinks that maybe this evolves into something so that there's one version of events where at the end of the pandemic, we decide we're at an end point, or maybe it's something we do every now and then or something like that. Mm-hmm. Or maybe people adapt in ways where we have an audience that wants to keep seeing it and we feel like we want to keep doing it. And maybe the version of this post-pandemic is another iteration of it somehow. I wasn't necessarily sure of how long we were going to keep doing it at UCB, just because you never know what's going to happen with, everyone's, careers. And, if Griffin and I had both booked like regular roles on TV shows, or if Patrick had gotten a job that meant he had to go to Hollywood, or
if I had booked a regular role on a TV show, you didn't even bring that up. What if I had?
What if you had?
I could be Maisel's girlfriend, boyfriend.
Oh no,
the range.
We do always encourage our listeners to make fan art, and if any of our listeners are listening to this, Patrick Cotnoir as the marvelous Mrs. Maisel's new girlfriend is now on the table. A simple misspeaking has led to hopefully some delightful contributions.
Oh
no,
that is wonderful.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, I also think that this is going to change so many things about the way people think about life, the way people think about entertainment. And all we can do is just keep going step by step with it. 5 months ago, I didn't want to do this. And now if I wasn't able to do it, I'm not sure what I would be doing with myself,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Can you tell us where, or people who don't know, where they can find the show?
Oh, yeah. You can find it. It's every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on planetscum.live. But then if you can't watch that, we encourage you to watch it on our YouTube channel. If you just search the George Lucas Talk Show, you'll find every moment of live streamed video on there, as well as there's some pre-pandemic shows on there. There's a few Comic-Con shows, and you can watch all that on there. But yeah, it's very easy to find. We break it up into the actual show with the guests, and then we break it up into the after show afterwards, which is totally optional. It's a bunch of bullshit, screw around, fun, ranging from 45 minutes to 6 more hours. Totally whatever you want to, get into it with.
Yeah, definitely go check it out. And if you're going to watch that marathon, but you don't want to go through the whole thing, I definitely say scrub through it, because it's actually, it's a fun document on kind of the deterioration of the human psyche after 30 hours of watching movies.
I would say the run, if you're going to watch any of it, the run from Rogue One to Empire is probably the peak, and then Paul Scheer comes in around Last Jedi, Gil Ozeri in Force Awakens. Those are also fun.
Yeah, it's brilliant stuff.
But I second the call to scrub through it. Definitely.
Yeah, I do too. But I'm just giving you, if you want the highlights, that's probably the top craziness right then.
It's so good. Now I want to bring us on to the movie challenge that has been brought to us by our guests. Every time we have a guest, a movie is suggested. And this time Patrick came to me with the Muppet Movie. So tell me what brings that to your mind when it comes to a suggestion like this?
Well, I knew Conor and I were both going to be on, and I know that we both have a deep love for that movie, a deep connection to that movie. I'm not going to say a rainbow connection, but I'm going to say a deep connection.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you hadn't done it, and I don't think you've done any Muppet movies.
We have not done any Muppet movies, but we have done Dark Crystal, and we have done Labyrinth, which are in the Jim Henson workshop of things, but we had not done any. We had discussed it recently, and when you said that, that's why I responded to you. Sometimes somebody names the perfect movie. We had literally been talking about it and discussing which one we would do.
That's great. So I was trying to rectify that error. I saw that and I was like, this is our chance to swoop in and talk about this. Because we could have talked about Star Wars. We could have talked about whatever, but we've also talked about Star Wars to death. And it's, there's only...
And
the world doesn't need 2 more white guys talking about Star Wars for any more time than it already has.
But also tune into our show every Sunday.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would say there was actually many attempts. We made several attempts to do a George Lucas talk show at UCB that would celebrate the anniversary of the Muppet movie, and they all fell through.
Yeah. It was mostly we were hinging on one person, and the schedule just didn't keep working. We were trying to get one person, then we were going to build it out from there, and it just didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I think that wraps it up for us. Everybody, go check out the George Lucas talk show on planetsgun.live on Sundays at 8.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or on YouTube, or any moment of the week.
Or on YouTube.
Between 12 a.m. and 1 a.m. That's the only time you can't watch it on YouTube.
That's it. It's a blackout period. You just get some rest that hour and then come back.
Yeah.
And then you can listen to Dead Eyes. That's available just about anywhere, right, Connor?
Anywhere that podcasts are found.
Awesome. So if you can find us, you can find him and go listen to that. Guys, thank you so much. I will close just very briefly by saying you two have a genuine role in the existence of this show. There's that one episode of Gethard where he is standing there and he's like, I want to know what this person's Chris Gethard Show is. I want to know what this person's Chris Gethard Show is. That night at 4:00 in the morning, I texted my co-host and pitched the idea for this show. That's where that came from. And you two were a very big part of that show and a very big part of my love for that. So I say thank you for entertaining me then. Thank you for keeping me entertained now during all this. And thank you so much for joining me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
Guys, what a great talk that ended up being. Thanks again to Patrick and Connor, who were just so generous with their time and so fun to talk to. It was a genuine treat to get to spend some time with them. They're guys I've been a fan of for a long time, and I was lucky enough to be able to connect with them like this, and we got to talk, and we got a new movie. We got a new movie next week, guys. And it's a movie we kind of wanted to do already, and so there's nothing easier than that. I'm always afraid. I never say this to the guests, but I'm always terrified of what they might actually bring to me. I'm waiting for one day I'm going to get somebody really cool, and then they're going to go, we're doing the Bridges of Madison County. I'm like, oh, God. But they brought us one that not only interests us greatly, but was actually semi on our docket. We are doing the Muppet Movie, ladies and gentlemen. Let us give a listen to the trailer.
Hollywood, the pot of gold at the rainbow's end.
Hey, we're all going to Hollywood. You want to come with us?
Hollywood! It's time to grab your pack, stick out your thumb, and hitch a ride for the adventure of your life.
Hey, wait for me!
It's Jim Henson's The Muppet Movie.
Moving right along. Footloose and fancy free. You know, I hear this movie is dynamite.
It's a story of the open road where hopeful hitchhikers come by the carload.
One of them?
No thanks. I'm on my way to New York City to try to break into public television.
There's Fozzie at the wheel.
A bear in his natural habitat. A Studebaker.
Kermit guiding the way.
Turn left if you come to a fork in the road. Fork in the road. I don't believe that.
And a roadside distraction named Miss Piggy.
Wow.
Hogging the spotlight. Now it's all aboard.
Everybody on to Hollywood!
As the Muppets hit the jackpot.
They're the standard rich and famous contract for Kermit the Frog and Company.
And Hollywood stars get into the act. Milton Berle, Richard Pryor, Bob Hope, Steve Martin, and others.
Would you taste it for us, please?
Excellent choice.
And now Hollywood will never be the same.
Stand by. Here we go.
Now you can own the Muppet Movie on video cassette.
Okay, guys, the Muppet Movie. This wasn't the one that actually entered my consciousness first of all of the Muppet things. I actually believe the first one I ever saw is The Great Muppet Caper. And the first one, or the one that I've definitely seen the most, was Muppets Take Manhattan. So to actually get to go back and watch this one was kind of a fun little dive into childhood. You can find this on Disney Plus if you have a subscription to such a thing, and only if you have a subscription. I don't want to hear about people sharing passwords and all that kind of stuff. We keep it honest here at Miscast Commentary. Don't worry about all the other times you've heard about downloaded movies or any of these other things. All lies, all subscriptions, all streaming, all owning movies. Actually, for the most part, they really were. The only times we came across anything where I didn't have a movie that I owned is because something got fucked up. I either broke a Blu-ray player or something like that, and the show must go on. And you know what? People have died making this show. Okay? Wilfred Brimley just died, guys. He didn't die. He died while I was in production for this show. So he died making this show a little bit. I'd like to just say a really quick word, if I could, about Wilfred. Diabetes. Anyway, so moving on. That's it for this week. I'm kidding, guys. Wilfred Brimley, a major character actor of the day. Find him in Cocoon. Find him in one of our own commentaries of Hard Target. All over the place. He was such a famously grumpy man who also at the same time was a famously sweet man. Like, he just seemed like an old teddy bear that, you know, couldn't have the sugars. But he will be missed. He is actually a part of our conversation, or was a part of our conversation, in that we talked about the Ewoks Battle for Endor, and he was in that. He will be very much missed. And also Regis. We didn't really get to talk about Regis since it happened. Very, very sad. I mean, I'm sure it meant a lot more to people who he was really in their life, but I mean, the only time I saw Regis was when I was sick from school, right? It's kind of the only way I really had experience with Bob Barker other than the sexual harassment trials. But the idea of somebody so known and so, you know, loved, especially in a time when talk show hosts right now are getting a little bit of shit for the way they treat people. You know, it's sad. And he, you know, I'm happy that we got to read that somebody died of natural causes instead of dying of COVID, R.I.P. Herman Cain, or any other methods. You know, he didn't go out on a meth binge or all trying to jump his Harley over something. So we can be grateful for that. To his family, Dan Gore, who is his son-in-law, who is a creator on The Good Place. I think I've got the right guy. And he had a very nice tribute to him, and he seemed like a really sweet guy. And there's a lot of really funny clips of him with people like David Letterman out there, and there's clips of him with old wrestlers and stuff like that. There were a lot of clips of things that I hadn't seen before that have been kind of, you know, brought to light since his passing. And it's a joy to be able to properly memorialize somebody in this world now, because not in the COVID world, but just in the technological world, you can go back and find clips and you can say, like, you know, you can really introduce somebody to, you know, someone you cared about in that way in the entertainment world, as it were. So, you know, not to be a bummer anymore. I just wanted to say a quick word about those guys. But once again, I thank Conor Ratliff and Patrick Cotnoir, who were, you know, just so fantastic. And you're going to hear more from them next week. The clips from our Muppet movie discussion will be entered in, as is done for all of our movies. So this isn't a surprise to you now. Unless you are somebody who's hearing us for the first time, then this is a gigantic surprise. You're like, what? You do full-length commentaries of movies? You must be the smartest people in the fucking world. And you're not wrong, okay? And I mean, this isn't the proof of that, but, you know, I'm developing some vaccines and stuff, not for COVID. I was in the middle of something else, so I'm really sorry. But you'll thank me later, I'm just saying. Swamp Ass will be a thing of the past, thanks to me. It's as good a place as any to end an episode, right? Thank you so much for listening. As always, find us at miscastcommentary.com. Email us your thoughts. Email us your dreams. Who do you want us to try and get on the show? What movies do you want us to do? It doesn't necessarily mean we'll get those people or we'll do those movies. Doesn't necessarily mean we could get those people on our best day. Sometimes I get really lucky, like this time. Sometimes I do not get lucky and they just ignore me. But this is, you know, this is the life that I've chosen, more or less. But email us, podcast@miscastcommentary.com, with any of your thoughts. I don't care if you just call us a piece of shit. I like reading emails that aren't spam. So send away. Find us on Twitter @miscastpodcast. I'm @JK Finley. Todd's @miscasttodd. You're not missing much with that one, I'm not going to lie. If I think you could get him to tweet more if you started following him. If he got more followers and I said, hey, somebody's paying attention to you over here, I bet you'll get some tweets. I don't think you're going to be happy with everything you see, but you're going to be happy that you followed him because he's a good guy and he deserves it. But I'm always tweeting. I'm usually tweeting nonsense about politics or responding to other people's funny tweets in a more nonsensical, less funny kind of way, or just talking about this show because I love it and I love you and I want to connect with you sons of bitches. And you can also find us on Instagram at miscastcommentary. You can find us on Tumblr. Join our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/whatever, /miscastcommentary. I am still on Facebook, not as a tribute to the Zuckerberg, but just as another way to connect with you guys. I love any which way that you guys can reach me. So by all means, reach out. As always, like, subscribe, rate, review, all those great things help us get seen. If you go to Apple Podcasts and you do all of that rating and stuff, it helps us, jump up their algorithm. I can't explain that stuff to you because all that shit about me being really smart before was a complete lie, and I don't know anything about this stuff, but I do know that it helps because somebody else on a different podcast that I listen to told me that it helps, and this is how I've learned to podcast in general. So please do all those things if you enjoy the show. If you don't like the show, still review it. I don't care if I get a 4-star rating. Like I know that kills Uber people, but it's not going to end my life. This is not my career. So just, do all those things. And then if you don't want to do one of those things, but you enjoyed the show, but you're like, I can't be bothered to click the 5th star, that's all the way over to the right, then just tell a friend and say, hey, go check these guys out. They're doing something, I don't want to say special, but they're doing something, and go check them out. And I will be grateful. I won't know that you did it. You don't have to prove it to me. I'm not looking for anything like that. Every time I do these episodes by myself, this is where I go. This is what happens when I am speaking to myself and speaking alone, is I spiral a little. I don't blame you. I blame Todd. He's not fucking here. He'd be the one keeping me on task you get it. You know what I mean. Anyways, all the ways to reach out to us, please do. We love you. We will see you next week with the Muppet Movie with Conor and Patrick back on board. And next week, exclusively on the website, you'll get the entire interview beginning to end. There's always, the interview was over an hour and a half, so there will be a lot of stuff that you didn't hear between this episode and between the clips and next episode. They had a lot to say. We had a lot of fun talking about the George Lucas talk show. We had a lot of fun talking about Chris Gethard Show, the Muppets. We got into all sorts of things. We talked about Looney Tunes. We talked about voiceovers. We talked about all sorts of fun stuff. So you can check all of that out on our website next Friday. So check all that out. We'll have it all on Twitter, which is why you follow us at Miscast Podcast, right? Right? Okay. We'll see you next time.
This has been Miscast Commentary with your hosts, Joe Finley and Todd Murray. Executive producer, Joe Finley. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. Visit www.miscastcommentary.com for all news related to the podcast. Miscast Commentary is a Miscast Media production.